Okay, the last dish that we're gonna do is Chupe de Camarones, which is a Peruvian chowder. This thing does end up being a little bit more stew-like in nature, but I just want to run through the ingredients here for you. The first thing that we're going to do is take the shrimp shells that we have reserved, and we're going to use just a little bit of water to create a little bit of a background flavor in the stock. We have some peeled and deveined shrimp that will go in later, just long enough to cook it through. We have some potatoes, some shrimp stock that we've made here in-house, a little bit of rice, which is going to help thicken that stew, some milk, Queso Fresco, which we're going to crumble a little bit more and add in at the very end. We have our start of our mirepoix here with just a little bit of onion and celery. We're going to add garlic to that, and then we'll also add our tomato puree, and towards the tail end we'll add some corn. But we have as our spicing for this some cumin, some dried oregano, and some crushed red pepper. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this guy. And the first thing that I want to do is take my water and get it simmering with our shrimp shells. So we're just going to add all of those in. And like I said, all we're trying to do here is add a little bit of background flavor to the entire dish. So now that all those are in, we're going to let that just simmer for about 10 minutes. So in that time period, we're going to go ahead and get the rest of the chowder started. And I have a pan on here. We're going to just add a little bit of oil to that pan. In this case, I want to get a nice little bit of sweat on my celery and my onion. I don't really want to get a whole lot of brown. And then we'll start introducing everything else into this particular soup. Okay, so I have my celery and onion in. Like I said, I have it on a medium-low heat for right now. I'll kick that back even a little bit further as we progress. I'm going to also keep an eye on my secondary stock that we have going with just the shrimp shells. And again, there's a lot more flavor in the shrimp shells than there really is in the shrimp itself. So holding on to those and using them to create stocks will help you create sauces, and you're just going to get more depth completely out of your dish, because we're making sure that we have all the flavor of all of that shrimp going into this. Okay, you see that again, we have our stuff starting to cook here. I'm going to add my garlic to that mixture as well. And I'm just sticking my nose in there. All I want to do is be able to smell that garlic start to open up a little bit, smell the onion and the celery, and I know that we're on our way to doing what we need to do from here on out. Okay, I'm going to add just a little bit more oil just to make sure that I have a nice sweat on these vegetables. You can see that the onions are starting to turn slightly translucent here. The same with the celery, it's starting to lose a little bit more of its color. So what we're going to do now is actually add all of our spice mix to this. Okay, and again, I'm going to add my cumin. And I always want to add this in, again, when I have some sort of fat. In this case, oil. If it was butter, clarified butter, bacon fat, duck fat, whatever it is. We want to make sure that we're getting these dried spices in a little bit earlier so they can toast in that oil and become a little bit more fragrant. When we do that, we'll actually use less of it because we'll have pulled more of the essential oils out of the ground spice. Okay, so I'm going to let that go just a little bit longer, and then we're going to be introducing our tomato puree, the stock that we've made, and then eventually we're going to strain out and add the stock that we're making right at the moment. Okay, so I can really smell the oregano starting to open up a little bit, the cumin as well. I can smell a little bit of spice coming off of that pepper. So I think we're about ready to go ahead and move to the next stage. Okay, I have just straight tomato puree that I'm going to be adding here. And what I want to do here is just kind of let this cook a wee little bit, just so that it takes a little bit of the raw edge off of the tomato puree, so it doesn't taste quite as I don't know, canned. Okay, that'll also help bring out some of the natural sweetness in the tomato. I'm going to go ahead and add all of my stock to that. And again, this is the stock that we made here in-house. And this is a shrimp stock, so again, we're just trying to fortify all of those flavors the best that we can. Our other stock is going to simmer for probably another 5 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and strain that off and add it to it. And that's kind of where we'll pick up next on this particular video. Okay, I went ahead and strained my secondary broth. So these are what's left of my shrimp shells, which you can see that they've been cooked a little bit. I pushed as much of the liquid out as I possibly could. I added that to the mixture that is already on the stove. Okay, and all we're trying to do here is wait for this to come up to a boil. Once it does, I'm going to add my potatoes and my rice. That's what's really going to make this a lot more stew-like for the soup itself. And once the potatoes have cooked and the rice is cooked, which will take about 15 to 20 minutes, then we're going to incorporate the corn, the shrimp, the milk, and also the queso fresco, and it will be about ready for service. So we're just about at a boil here. I'm going to go ahead and add my potatoes to that mixture. Okay, I'm also going to add my rice. I'm going to allow that to come close to a boil again, cut the heat back, and allow it to simmer until both of those are almost tender, and then I'm going to come back. So this process will take about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll come back to the next stage where I start adding more of the ingredients and show you where I'm at. Okay, so we're at the last stage of our chowder here. Our potatoes have softened, our rice has absorbed some of the moisture. So now I'm going to add my corn. to this chowder. I'm also going to add my milk and my Queso Fresco now. And then the only thing I have to do is finish by putting my shrimp in here. The recipe that I was drawing off of says to saute the shrimp in a separate pan and then add it to the soup. I'm afraid that we might lose a little bit of the shrimp flavor in that process. Plus it's another pan that I dirty. So I'm going to put the shrimp in and just allow that the finish cooking in the chowder, which won't take very long at all. Okay, I'm going to add my milk to that mixture. And I don't want to let this boil, but I need to make sure that the milk gets really nice and hot in here. Okay, my Queso Fresco is going to go in. I'm just going to move that around until the cheese melts out a little bit. Now, Queso Fresco is not really much of a melting cheese per se. It's going to just give us a little bit of background texture. It will melt out because it is a cheese, but not to the extent of, say, a mozzarella, a cheddar, definitely not an American. So we're going to have a little bit of a different texture in our finished product here. Okay, now that I have all that in, I'm just going to kick the temperature up just a wee little bit so that we get back to a bare simmer. Once I get to that simmer, then I'm going to add my shrimp. The shrimp, once it is completely cooked in the chowder, I'm going to take it off, adjust my seasonings with salt and white pepper, and be ready to do my plating and presentation. Okay, at this stage you can see that I have just a bare simmer going around the outside of that. I'm going to adjust my temperature down just a wee little bit, and then I'm going to add in all of my shrimp for this particular dish. The shrimp won't take very long to cook, about 2 to 3 minutes, and it has that handy little timer on it that says, hey shrimp, I'm ready. So all of my shrimp goes in. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir. And after a couple minutes, when my shrimp is ready, I'm going to take this off the heat, season it with salt and white pepper, and be ready to plate this particular dish. Okay, so my shrimp has thoroughly cooked inside of my chowder. I'm just going to give it a little quick taste for seasoning. Make a quick adjustment with some salt. A little white pepper, and again we have some crushed red pepper in here, so we don't want to go we're going to go a little bit more sparingly on that. Okay, I'm going to taste again for seasoning. All right, now we're going to go ahead and serve up that chowder. We want to make sure that since people will have ordered this, we want to make sure that they know they're getting shrimp chowder here. So I'm going to just fish out a few pieces of shrimp to add to the top of this as my garnish. Just give it a small wipe, and there is our Chupe de Camarones, which is the Peruvian shrimp chowder.